Hello again, and welcome to Eddie V Live. I'm your host, and this is Tuesday. It's good to be back with you guys. Last night, I was thinking, and my friend was texting me that it was a little crazy. I don't think I was super organized. I was trying to just do it off the dome, the old episode. Tonight, I'm gonna kind of go off of what I was talking about yesterday, but a little different. I think I've come to the conclusion that our culture is just crazy. It's evil. It's like evil in the most subtle of ways. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into that, do we have anything to announce? I don't think so. I've been told I need art. That is true. Tell me about the lighting, though. What do you guys think about the lighting? I feel very orange. I don't know if I want to be orange, but if it's okay with the people, I don't have a really good, I don't know. I just want to talk. I don't even care if you can see me as long as you can hear my voice. Can you hear me? So I need people to help me with the visuals. That's for sure. Help me with my own face. Help me with the face of the studio. Help me with the face of the lights. Help me with all the faces and the facets. But yes, today we're going to, and then we'll also talk about mental prayer just briefly. But we'll get into first how I think the culture is subtly evil. It's so, I don't want to say beautiful. It's so uglyly subtle. I don't even know how to say it. It's brilliant. It has to be made by the devil. But we were talking about Neil Gorsuch yesterday, so it's kind of springboarding off of that. And I was thinking today, what is the secular culture? What is it doing? What does it believe? And then I was thinking about the characteristics of the secular culture. And the two words that came to mind to me were mediocrity and tolerance, which probably aren't the hottest takes ever, but I want to dive into that. So, what do I mean by mediocrity and tolerance? Well, mediocrity, because it never makes the claim that anything is better than the other thing in our secular culture, which I think is just cowardly and evil and not true. I mean, how can we have the best society when the society can't even decide if one religion is better than another, or if like being fat or skinny is better than the other, or like what is the ideal of a family? Is two dads ideal? Is a mom and a dad ideal? Two moms ideal? If the culture or the society you're in can't even like stand with its chest out and say like, oh, this is what we believe is the best way to do things. Even if it wasn't going to make a moral stance, which I don't even know if that's possible. I think you'd have to make a moral stance. But even if you were trying to just make an efficiency stance or like a statistical stance, but even then you would have to you would have to have an ideal or some sort of principle you were trying to fulfill. So I don't even know if that's possible. So I'm kind of like refuting myself right now. But our culture is going to like look at all of the religions and say, oh, we're not going to decide if one's better than the other. There can only be maximum one true religion, right? I think we understand that. So that's like the mediocrity, and then the tolerance is, well, if we know that one religion, or if we know that, I don't know why I'm using religion and body type, but if we know that one body type is healthier than another, why wouldn't we enforce sounds kind of aggressive. Why wouldn't we back that up for our people in the culture, in the society that we live in? So basically, what it seems like to me is we had a Protestant culture. And people could disagree with that. I think it was Protestant culture. And then we replaced that culture for a culture that doesn't stand for anything except for like more and more tolerance of basically licentiousness at the core of it. I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel like that makes sense. And I'm trying to think of an analogy. Like if you have kids in a school, you have to come up with some way to evaluate who is more intelligent, or if you have people in a sports team, you have to have a way of evaluating who's the best player. So our culture is in the analogy is basically saying we don't know what's best, and therefore we are not going to have any criteria for evaluation. And then therefore everything goes because nothing is better than the other thing. That is a recipe for disaster. Because what if everyone's just doing the worst thing? And our culture would say, oh, well, as long as they're not hurting anyone else. But doing the worst thing is hurting other people, right? And I even see this in the church. I see this everywhere. I see this in the school system. I see this in the church. I see this obviously in our culture, everywhere. It's like we cannot stand for anything. We don't stand for anything. Obviously, there's people in our culture that stand for stuff, and if they're not afraid to get attacked for it or, you know, persecuted for it, whatever way that persecution pans out, those are the people that get what they want sometimes, unless there's other people that don't want that and they're stronger, have more power, then they don't get what they want. That's what I'm thinking. And I'm tempted to apply it to like our political situation, the situation in the church. Let's talk about the church real quick. Maybe a little controversial, but the idea that people can't say something in the liturgy is better or worse than something else. I feel like that is a huge problem. And maybe there's some areas where it is subjective. I mean, I'm even tempted to say there isn't an area, but I'd have to think about it more. But think music. Is every song or every type of music just equal in terms of the liturgy? I feel like I have to say no, but when you go into the battle of the church, the argument it seems to be is like everything has its own place and its own culture, and there's nothing better than the other thing. It's like, ah. And then they get you because if you say no, there are things that are better, you become like this bigot and you become insensitive and you're like intolerant and you're a racist and you're a sex, you know, t- going into other subjects. If you say a family is better off or it is morally important or morally necessary for the family to have a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is the father, then the mother, then the children in terms of leadership, you could be called in our culture, they would call you a sexist. But if you said, oh, it's okay if the woman has more leadership, so it's almost so it's not even mediocre or tolerant. It's just there's a specific religion that the secular culture, but what is that religion? It's so interesting. I felt like I was prepared, but now I'm just as I say it, I'm thinking about it more. It's like the religion of secular culture is the total upending of Christian culture. It's like the anti Christ culture. I might be being a little boisterous there, but that as I'm thinking about it right now, that's what it seems to me. And the secular culture does have a religion. Take there can never be a circumstance where there isn't a religion. You can never just have like some unbiased, neutral culture or society. I don't even think that's possible. But take our current secular culture. One thing that really sticks out to me constantly is the worship of science in our culture. In the mandatory, and we'll get into this, in the mandatory school system. So you are mandated by the government to attend school. Now you can have the option of going to a private school, charter school, or homeschool. It's actually pretty sketch how how free you are to do those things, but that's a subject for other people. But you're mandated to go to school. Usually it's going to be public school, and the public school will teach you no holds barred that evolution is true, even though it has not been proved at all scientifically. They'll just tell you, I was told that. Or even a more controversial take, which a lot of people believe. So I'll get a lot of flack for this, but even germ theory, as you know, Louis Pasteur and all that jazz, as it's come down to us from the 1800s, is just taught as fact. Even though I would argue it's never really been proven scientifically with controlled experimentation. So there is a religion that they have a faith in those things. They are told those things. There is no scientific evidence for those things. Maybe you could say they have a reasonable belief in that, a reasonable faith, but it is faith. And that's like that's part of the secular culture's religion. It's pretty interesting. It's very deep, and that's why it's so important we understand how bad the secular culture is. And I know I've harped on public education, but if you have children, it is so important for you to not send your kids to public school. It is I'm not against indoctrination. It's just evil indoctrination. It's false, it's ugly, and it's not good. It's not wholesome. Yeah, so in conclusion, that I mean, I know that's like kind of it was a rough segment there, but in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is that we cannot accept secular culture. And I think that's what's happened to maybe the church and just the people in general, even if they're not part of the Catholic Church, we've accepted it as like the best way to do things is like it's almost like we got tired or something. You were supposed to be fighting for the faith. The church needs to be free in the culture. The faith needs to be propagated. There's only one true faith. And it seems we just got tired of fighting for that. And then there was this secular thing that moved in post World War II. And it kind of gives you what you want a little bit in terms of material well being. So we almost made a pact with it. As Catholics, we made a pact. We're not gonna we'll fight pro-life, but we're not gonna do anything rash about it. We're not gonna be too annoying about it. We're gonna be very civilly annoyed about it, but nothing's ever gonna change because we like being comfortable. We like having our machines and our cars and our houses. If I'm being radical, that's what I mean. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little. And then my point is that we cannot compromise with the secular culture. We have to say that it is not good. And if it is not good, we have to eradicate it, which I think is going to sound very strong to a lot of people. And what that leads to is a belief that we cannot have a tolerant, vague culture. It has to be a Catholic culture. So we shouldn't, I mean, I guess we can make alliances with people, like Protestants, for example. But the trajectory always has to be towards the Catholic culture. And I feel like the church has kind of sat on our haunches, and us as the church has sat on the haunches and said, I'm going to live a mediocre life. I'm going to live a very tolerant life. I'm not saying to be mean to anyone or anything, but I'm just going to accept what has been given. And I'm saying we shouldn't accept it. And what does that look like? That looks like with education, it means homeschooling, which no Catholic should have their kid in public school. That's what I would say to that. Catholic school, maybe, private school, homeschooling. If there's no other choice, you're going to go to jail. You go to the public school, but hopefully that makes sense. It's like we cannot compromise, and essentially that's going to mean even if your kid goes to a Catholic school, the It's each individual living out the faith is what's going to change it. There's no shortcuts, basically. There's no law that's gonna be passed. There's no figure that's gonna rise up to save us all. It has to be each individual person, especially, the parents have to first themselves make the decision, "I'm going to be radically Catholic. I'm gonna radically follow the Lord Jesus." That's the only way to change things, and then they have to make the decision after they do that for themselves, they have to make the decision for their children. It's like, the most important thing for my child is that they know the faith. That is the most important thing. Not that they don't care if they learn math, but it should be infinite rungs below, excuse me, in importance from knowing the faith. And maybe I'm just maybe I'm just saying what everyone already knows, but it just doesn't seem like, and like the church needs to be able to say what, this is the better thing. Whether it's, I know I'm picking on the liturgy right now, but in terms of how society is structured, the family, and maybe the church does do that, but I never hear the church. I hear the Pope saying this a lot. The popes are always on it, but from the pulpit, from the bishops, um, well, like let's take education for example. We're just talking about that. Do you ever hear a bishop saying like, "We need your kids in Catholic school. We need your kids in homeschooled"? I don't hear that. And then kind of an off tangent of that is every kid was kind of homeschooled before the mandatory schooling in America in terms of Americans, which was like after 1850. So before that, everyone was homeschooled, and then after that, it was Protestant public schools, and then now, we already talked about what it is. So when people are like, "Oh, I can't homeschool because I don't really know anything," it's like, but you should know the faith, and you can give them that. And then if you need to supplement, but you could supplement with other teachers and things, but you need to be the one. This became an education talk, but I hope that it's like we cannot accept mediocrity. We cannot accept tolerance. Tolerance in the sense of everything is just as good as the other thing. It's like that is not true. Not that we're not going to have Muslims and Jews and Protestants in our culture. They're going to be there. And this has happened before. I've mentioned it before. But we cannot accept that those things are better than a Catholic culture or the Catholic faith. And right now it seems like we're compromising. It seems like we're doing that. So I want to fight against that. All right, I think this will be the last episode I'm going to talk about that. I know it's kind of weird because I'm thinking out loud, but I wanted to get that out there. That's what I've been thinking about today. The second thing I want to talk about was this amazing book I got. Put it up there. Is called The Catechism of Mental Prayer. I totally recommend, because we love mental prayer on this show. We love mental prayer. So definitely recommend this. Is very short, very cheap. And I encourage you, because mental prayer, St. Alphonsus says every saint was made a saint by mental prayer. So we got to do it. And then I want to talk about the book a little bit just to kind of advertise it a little bit. And I'm going to talk about the steps of mental prayer again. Mental prayer is not necessarily a bunch of steps or a list of things to do. It is very free. It is very opening, but having solid structure can help people. And so and if you have never done it before, you need to have structure. And then once you become a saint or whatever, don't worry about the structure. But here are the steps to mental prayer according to the Catechism of Mental Prayer. Again, a recommended purchase. Step number 1, preparation. So this has to do with recollection. You are stopping yourself and you're saying, who am I? Who is God? What am I doing? And you're also going to recognize the presence of God at that present moment. You're going to remember that God is present. So different words for the same thing is like you're recollecting, you're remembering, you're going into the presence of God. God is always present to you. It's only us that forget it. So when you're going into mental prayer, and this could just happen throughout the day too, is like where you just all of a sudden, maybe you see something beautiful, you see a beautiful skyline, and you say, God is with me. God is here. God is present in this beauty. But God is always present. So that's step number 1. It's recollection would be the word. Number Step 2 is the body of mental prayer, which has to do with, I love the word they use in this book. They say the interview with God. I usually say a conversation, but the interview with God, of our soul with God. This is where you talk to God and you listen to God. And I've always recommended, in this catechism, it actually talks about it's good to do mental prayer with like a specific point of Jesus's life, teaching of the church, things like that. I do this, you know, in my just randomly where I think about death, and I think that is maybe a concept that could be really valuable in mental prayer. You're just thinking about your death and you're talking to God about death, or you're speaking to Jesus about his carrying of the cross. You're speaking to Mary about the pain she's experiencing seeing Jesus crucified. All these things, and excuse me, when you're conversing with them, you tell them about your life too. You tell them what you're struggling with. You tell them what you need, your intercession, your thanksgiving. Thank you so much. I love you. Acts of faith, hope, and love. All these things. So that's the body, the interview. And number 3 is the conclusion. You're going to make resolutions. You're going to make acts, acts of, and I kind of already said it, but acts of thanksgiving, acts of faith. You're going to make resolutions to do things. And it even says in the catechism, is like, if you get to this point in the mental prayer and you haven't made a resolution, you need to make one right now, like right now. So resolutions. And then you're going to say, I thought this was beautiful too. You're going to say some parting words like, bye, Mary, I love you. You know, just it's a conversation. It's an interview with them. And they're really present to you. So you got to think about that. There's so much. So those are the 3 steps. The final one was the conclusion. But those are the 3 steps. There's so much more in here. I really boiled it down into those 3 steps. There's a ton of good stuff. So recommend everyone pick one of these up. Super cheap. Yeah, and we need for the salvation of souls, for the salvation of our own souls, for sanctity, we need mental prayer. We want to stay on it. We want to get with it. We want to be with it. Mental prayer. Mental prayer. And we're going to be talking about some other stuff too from Louis of Granada. He has this whole list. I'll read you the list actually. He has this whole list of basically what to do to be a saint. Here's the list. He says, mental prayer, cultivation of virtue, contempt for the world, contemplation of God and nature, mortification of the flesh, obedience to the commandments, participation in the sacraments, and imitation of the saints. So that's 8 things he says to be a saint. And then I wrote this down as well. He says, one mortal sin outweighs all the calamities and sufferings experienced since the creation. So I'll leave you with that. One mortal sin. You know, we're always, I know I am, you know, I'll complain about something, and I know we all do this. We complain about a suffering or something terrible that happens in the world. And then St. Louis of Granada is like, well, one mortal sin outweighs all of that stuff that we experience. So in a sense, he's saying we deserve it. We deserve the suffering. We deserve the calamity. I don't know if that's comforting to you. I think the truth of that rings in my head like a bell. I really do. Not in my best moments, I really do feel that is the truth of it. But I'm getting a little off topic. So hopefully that little talk on the secular culture and then the little discussion of that book, one more time, pick it up. And that's going to be it for tonight. So please, if you have any questions, comments, you want to argue with me, please comment below, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next episode. God bless you and God be with you.